Good afternoon, Timmy Talkers, and I hope you're all well. Today's tale is of spontaneous human combustion. So not really a ghost tale, but a tale of mystery nonetheless. And this can all be checked online. I did it earlier. And it was in Folkestone, just down the road from me. Right. Reg Gower pushed the door tentatively and went into the room, sniffing for smoke. After all, he was the landlord, and the tenant might have been burning something on the oven top. Best to be sure. He went in to see if the tenant might even be asleep, but it was unlikely as it was 10:30 in the morning. But now he was inside. There was a powerful smell of smoke, and perhaps it was then, or perhaps a little later, that Mr. Gower noticed a thin layer of greasy moisture on the windows and the flat surfaces of the room. The polystyrene kitchen tiles were slightly charred, and there was a small plastic air vent also charred, but there was little sign of serious fire damage. On the gas ring, still lit, there was a kettle that was half full, and it was boiling. There was little else of note if one discounted the polythene brush and dustpan, both totally undamaged that were only a few inches away from the pile of ashes that had once been the body of Barry Soudain. All else that remained of Mr. Gower's tenant was 1 foot and 1 trainer. It was only 2 days after Christmas in 1987, and it was a particularly bad time, an extraordinarily sad time for such a lonely and ugly death. Barry Soudain, who was a bachelor, who worked in the bakery below his flat in Canterbury Road as a cleaner and general handyman, was only 44 years of age, and his end was horrific. His body had been consumed in fire of elemental ferocity, yet it had been so localised that the room in which he had been found had not been touched. The police, not unnaturally, considered the possibility of murder. Had Barry Soudain been done to death elsewhere and his body burned and then transferred to his flat at the baker's shop in the centre of Folkestone? But that was preposterous, for the body was so profoundly burnt that it could not have been lifted. It would have been disintegrated completely, so even in its present vague human shape could not have been maintained. In that event, the police had to determine whether someone had broken into the flat and murdered him, but there was no sign of any break-in. Murder was a possibility, but it was written out, and so was suicide, because there was no evidence anywhere in the flat of petrol or any other fire accelerant. Clearly, the police decided the dead man had had a heart attack, and as he fell, he'd stumbled against a lit stove and caught fire, with obviously disastrous consequences. He had burnt to death, and his body consumed over the space of about 15 hours. But he had been seen previously in the evening at about 7:30, so it must be shortly after that his tragic fall. At least this was the police view. Unsurprisingly, from the outset, they'd rejected the notion of spontaneous human combustion, just as over the years many fire officers and medical men and coroners had turned their back on such an absurd suggestion. Yet the Home Office pathologist, Dr. Heath, did not dismiss the possibility of human combustion out of hand, saying at the post-mortem that further investigations were necessary, and that the coroner's court, a verdict of accidental death was rejected. The destruction of the rest of the body was so complete it was impossible to say how the man had died. There was no medical history of heart disease, and along with the remainder of his organs and the exception of his lungs, the heart had been completely destroyed. An open verdict, which is rare in these circumstances, was recorded. Jenny Randalls and Peter Hugh are serious professional researchers into matters which might be described as the supernatural and the paranormal. They bring to their work a tireless doggedness and critical scientific approach, but they are not out to support crack-brained flim-flam. Flim-flam, that's nice, isn't it? But at the same time, they do not dismiss out of hand what many describe as cranky notions. Their objectivity of scientific method had been a feature of their work over several years. When Barry Soudain died in December 1987, they had already been investigating human combustion for 5 years. Although there have been many claims for it, the evidence somehow was never totally convincing. How could it be accepted, this curious notion that people without warning, without any interference, suddenly burst into flames? But if absolute proof that had been hard to come by, the Soudain case at last seemed to present compelling evidence that the phenomena, which well over 100 years have been the subject of spasmodic debate in some quarters, ought to be taken seriously. After the inquest, the two researchers asked to see the police photographs at the scene of the Folkestone Canterbury Road flat, but their request was refused. They were told that the pictures were pornographic and the hideous detail of the incinerated corpse. They did, however, have more success with the coroner, who presided at the inquest, who said he could not rule out spontaneous human combustion as the cause of Soudain's death. There was a possibility built, of course, but the more or less the total destruction of the body could not permit him to reach a verdict. But Randalls and Hewer brought the Sedan case positively into the debating chamber because there was a number of factors which needed to be considered. Take the kettle on the gas ring. When Mr. Gower entered the room, which was still there when the police arrived, who half filled the kettle? Who lit the gas? Who at some point shifted the kettle so that only half of it was on the ring? The answer is Barry Sedan, and that has never been in dispute. So when did he put it there? The matter of timing is crucial. The police were of the view it must have taken at least 15 hours to reduce the body to which a state in which it was found, almost crematorium levels of damage. So it would have taken at least 15 hours. But how long would it take a kettle on a gas ring to run dry? How long would it take to burn through the bottom? Could there be any doubt that if the kettle had been on the ring for 15 hours, it would have burnt through and boiled dry? Randall and Hugh believe their kettle must have been placed on the gas ring at no more an hour or two before. What they say in effect is that the body of Barry Sedan was reduced to ashes in a very short space of time. The condition of the body must be considered. Jenny Randalls and Peter Hugh consulted a crematorium superintendent who found it difficult to accept that a mere house fire could have wreaked such havoc on a body. The pelvis and thigh bones, the socket joints, were not converted into ash in a crematorium, but they had been in Barry's Sedan. There you go. A tale of mystery above an old baker's, which is still there. Take care, everybody. Today's song is The Crazy World of Arthur Brown and Fire. I hope you're all well and take care.